here we are back again, and we should a couple of things right up top. First off, there will be no show next week. We are taking a 1 week hiatus so that Tim can make a movie.
Yeah,
Tim's going to be shooting an independent film, and
the kind of films that people like us can shoot. Is our independent.
So that's going to be. We'll talk more about that in the future as that comes around. But it's going to be a lot of fun. And so no show next week, but we will be back week after that, right early in August, and hopefully have a little bit to talk about. Also, we had a comment on the Facebook page about why we didn't spend more time on the controversy surrounding Isle of Dogs. And it's something we can probably revisit for a minute because obviously I'm not Asian and you're not Asian.
Yeah.
So I don't think we felt overly qualified to kind of dive into that. But that did come up during our last LAFCA meeting a little bit.
In a roundabout sort of way.
In a roundabout kind of way. One of our new members, Angie Han, who was also covered in a great Los Angeles piece Los Angeles Times piece that Tim was in, by the way. If you didn't see, you need to go online. We posted it to the Facebook pages, but you need to go online. There's a fantastic piece on diversity and criticism, and Tim is featured prominently along with some of our other colleagues. Justin Chang.
I'll even have to admit that I am. I'll say that I am. I will not be humble.
It was great.
Be humble.
But anyway,
important subject, of course.
Important subject.
And tangential to the thing. It's all kind of, the thing with Scarlett Johansson and that transsexual thing, and she dropped out of that movie. All of these things.
And she had previously had trouble with the anime adaptation. Yeah, Ghost in the Machine. So here's the thing. I've read both what Angie Han had written about Isle of Dogs, which is not very favorable. Our colleague Jen Yamato really, really despises the movie. Justin Chang, a little bit more forgiving of it. So here's the thing.
Justin like Mamma Mia too, though. Anyway, I tease.
But so here's the thing. I understand at a distance all of the reservations that people have about Isle of Dogs, which is, Wes Anderson is he's sort of using an Asian aesthetic as wallpaper in a way, which I know for a lot of people feels disrespectful and dismissive, and even the way that some of the accents are used and some of the way the animations is that it almost feels like yellow face stereotyping in some respect, the way that things were back in the Mickey Rooney and
no.
Yeah.
No.
And
can't get there from here.
It didn't strike me as that way.
No. First of all, if we begin with the fairly grade school notion that imitation is the best form of flattery.
Yeah.
I really do begin there, right?
Yeah.
When I find someone imitating something, I know that the thing that they're imitating is interesting and probably better.
Yeah.
Because they're that's my cue right there. This is a thing. This is an aesthetic. This is an idea. Gilbert and Sullivan. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. This is great. This is wonderful. What did they do? They didn't look at all that Japanese culture and say, "Ew, no, poo." No. They were like, "Oh my God, this is astounding. This is amazing. How can I bring this and create it and do?" And then the other thing that I intention is everything.
Yeah.
Wes Anderson. What is Wes Anderson's intention? Does Wes Anderson have some nefarious intention?
Yeah, no,
I just don't think he does. None whatsoever. So I just can't get to a problem from here.
See, and that gets to something interesting too. I mean, I'm glad you raised Gilbert and Sullivan, because the Mikado is very much the same kind of a thing. So is Madame Butterfly, Puccini, right? And if you look at Shakespeare, when Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet, well, that takes place in Italy. If you look at the fact that a lot of Shakespeare has been adapted for Peking opera, there are all of these kind of cross currents between cultures, and I think you're right. Intention does matter. The one thing that also struck me was consistency. When people, for example, they'll jump on The Simpsons because of the character of Apu. That's become a thing lately. It's like you're making fun of South Indians, and Apu is a stereotype. Well, but people, if you look at
I'm sorry.
Every single character on The Simpsons is a stereotype, is mockery. Homer Simpson is kind of like every negative attribute of every fat suburban white dad rolled into one and magnified. I mean, It
is the point of the
it's
program.
the point of the show.
And if I could point out too about some of these sort of ethnic stereotypes that have to do with the way either characters are played or voiced in voiceover sort of like situations, using these sort of accents and ways of speaking, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go back to that little movie where he was shrinking people down.
Oh yeah.
It was last year, but you know the one I'm talking about.
The Alexander Payne. Yes, Alexander Payne.
There was there was a Vietnamese character in there. He spoke in a certain way, and all of this guys see this trend. Now, here's the problem that I'm having with that. I know personally people who speak in the ways that these people speak.
Yeah,
they are friends of mine.
Yeah,
they sound. I know a cat who sounds just like Hapu. I've known him for 25 years. Works at the 7-Eleven. You know, you always hang out with Flavor Flav.
Yeah, right.
Back in the day, him, and Flavor Flav used to hang out over there. At the 7-Eleven where he worked, speaking like Hapu every day of the week, right? Now, I love him. That's my homie. And if you're to tell me, what you're telling me is the way that there's something wrong with the way my boy speaks.
Yeah.
That's what you're telling me. And I'm sorry, I reject that whole and complete. There is nothing wrong with the way he speaks. I like the way he speaks. I understand every word he says. I got homies in the hood who talk the way homies in the hood talk. And when I hear people say, well, he talks like he's from the hood, so... what's wrong with that? Sometimes I talk like I'm from the hood, as people who listen to the show probably know. And your mother spoke with a German accent.
Yep, sure did.
I love the way your mother spoke, and I don't want nothing to change about the way your mother spoke. All of the Yiddish people, all of the Jewish people that I grew up who spoke with these Yiddish accents, I love the way they spoke.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, whenever we do this, what we're saying is there's something wrong with the way these people speak. And I understand that it is possible to mock the way a person speaks, but the way a person speaks in and of itself, no, I'm not going to reject that. I'm not going to do it. It's wrong, and I ain't going to do it.
That's the exclamation point I'm looking for. I agree completely. I mean, I think the only other thing that I would say in this is that if there really were something genuinely offensive about, like transcendently offensive about the things that Wes Anderson was doing in that, then I think those of us who are not Asian, and I understand if you are Asian that could feel very sensitive, but I think the other measure is if I'm not Asian and I go to that and I come away feeling some sense of respect and reverence for the culture, I think in that sense it has succeeded. Nothing about that film. I didn't walk into that and think, it's like when people say about All in the Family, like, oh my gosh, All in the Family, it was such a racist show. No, because if you watched All in the Family back in the day, you walked away from that show pitying, more often than not, Archie Bunker and respecting George Jefferson. But there's a very, very famous episode with Archie and George Jefferson. It might even be the first one where they actually meet, which is the one where it's a party. And the Jeffersons are throwing a party. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yes.
And Archie and Edith are the only white people at that party until another guy shows up. And Archie says, oh, who are you? And it turns out that is Jenny's dad.
Yeah.
And he realizes George has not yet met Jenny's dad. And it's a brilliant piece of television because you walk away from that, everything is flipped on its head.
Yes.
And you walk away from that episode transformed in the ways that you see race in America. It's extraordinary.
And what's funny is that the people who make judgments about that show, and then the Jeffersons that came after it, who didn't grow up watching those shows and thus living in the times when those TV shows were made, it's almost an experience that you had to have in real time.
Yeah.
You can't look at any of those programs from the distance of 45 years now and make a judgment about them. You can't. You had to be 13 or 14 or 12 or 10 or 20 or something in 1974. Walking around this planet in 1974. And everything you see or in black exploitation films or in so many other kinds of movies makes so much more sense.
It does.
And we can't do that. This is all one needs to do with respect to the Wes Anderson film in particular. You might say the same thing about Moonrise Kingdom. I think that's one of the ones you could say.
Sure.
Here's the question. Does Wes Anderson love Japanese culture? I don't know Wes Anderson, but I can tell you this, he does.
Yeah.
He loves Japanese culture. I know he does. Does Wes Anderson love Eastern Indian culture? Sure, he does. I can tell. How do I look at his movies and I can see his love for those cultures.
The attention to detail.
So how can anyone who sees these movies not see that? And then once you see that, what is the problem?
Yeah.
There
we go.
I'm done.
All right, well, I'm going to hit a few things just off top. We got 3 really, really terrific Blu-rays from
Darjeeling
Naxos.
Limited. That's what it was. Sorry.
Darjeeling Limited. Yes, that's it. Yeah. We got 3 terrific Blu-rays from Naxos, classical music stuff. Really, really great stuff. I got to really, really highly recommend Verdi's Nabucco. I had never. This is look, Verdi wrote a lot of operas, and there are like 2 or 3 of them that ever get significantly performed and staged in America. Nabucco is one I'd never even heard of, and this is staged at the Verona Arena, the Arena di Verona, in classical Italian fashion. It is a gorgeous, gorgeous place to stage things. This is amazing ancient arena, and what an absolutely tremendous performance this is. It is absolutely beautiful, just first rate. Don't know any of the people who are in the cast. Don't know anybody who did this. I'm the conductor Daniel Oren, director is Arnaud Bernard. Don't know these people. This is the arena itself. It's their orchestra and chorus. So this is everything. This is the whole team there that normally does all the performances and stagings at Arena di Verona. This is on Blu-ray from Bel Air Classics, and it is absolutely stunning. Highly recommended for fans of opera and classical. We also have Franz Lehar's Das Land des Lachelms. Here I am, half German. I can't pronounce this stuff. This is from the Zurich Opera House, and Franz Lehar, of course, not necessarily an opera guy. This is light opera. Franz Lehar is one of the great light opera figures of the last century or so. And this is not one that I'm overly familiar with. I'm more familiar with things like Die Fledermaus and that kind of stuff. But this is it's nice. It's perfectly charming and engaging and well put together. It's not like Nabucco. It's not that. But it has its own charm, and if you like Lehar, you'll enjoy that. And then Tchaikovsky's Manfred Symphony and Mendelssohn's A Midsummer Night's Dream together on a single Blu-ray from the Lucerne Festival line. The complete rundown here is it is Felix Mendelssohn's overture and excerpts from the incidental music to Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. And then Tchaikovsky's Manfred is a symphony that's based on the writings of Lord Byron, if you're not overly familiar with it. So those are both here on a very, very nice HD Blu-ray from the Lucerne Festival line of Accentus Music. So there's that. And then a few docs that we should make mention of. A couple of 4K ones. Not a lot of these docs in 4K, and these come from Shout. And they are really, really worth checking out. They're all of these come from there are a handful of people that do these 4K docs. They go out, they're sort of travel logs. It's more about how amazing the photography and the special effects and what they can put together to really show off the format. But this really does show off the format, and you got a couple of great narrators here. Dream Big, Engineering Our World, narrated by Jeff Bridges, is kind of just an architectural tour de force, and it goes through all of these amazing locations and architectural achievements, and which are in turn engineering achievements. And it's like a Seven Wonders of the World kind of a tour, but it's beautiful. You go everything from the Great Wall of China to roller coasters to all kinds of other unbelievable technological innovations. Really super tall buildings and all kinds of really interesting stuff. It's very, very good, and it's very, very well put together. And it includes a 4K Blu-ray, a 3D Blu-ray, a regular Blu-ray, and a digital copy. And then the other one that goes along with it, same line, is the National Parks Adventure, which is narrated, of course, by the only person whose voice should be associated with national parks, Robert Redford. And Robert Redford kind of is like the voice of the wise old live out in the he made movies about people who lived out in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness, and then he became that guy. So anyway, this is just a beautiful tour of the national parks. It's absolutely tremendous. It's a lot of history, a lot of natural beauty, and some tremendous photography here. The director is Greg McGillivray of the company McGillivray Freeman, which apparently
wonderful 3D.
They
going
do
back 30 years now.
They've been doing a lot of stuff. I mean, I'm not overly familiar. I know they have a long pedigree doing these kinds of things. Yeah. So they've moved obviously into the home entertainment 4K realm and doing a beautiful job of it. So This also includes a 4K, a 3D Blu-ray, a Blu-ray, and a digital copy. So it's lovely stuff. And really, especially if you have an HDR, 4K television, which is the only one that you should have, unless you have a little tiny one and it doesn't have the technology in it. But for HDR, the national parks is just phenomenal. It bursts. It's like you're literally right there standing in front of all these things.
Groovy.
And then the last three docs here, Pressing On, the letterpress film, which is a documentary about letterpress and the printers who are preserving it and trying to keep it, a viable artifact of the past. It's letterpress is if all you know is laser printing, you don't realize that printing used to be a really, really meticulous, almost tedious process.
It was very analog.
Very analog.
It required pressing things together, blocks and ink.
Anyway,
machinery.
So this is all about the people who are trying to preserve basically the art and craft of that, so it doesn't become something that you just read about in Encyclopedia Britannica and people are on Wikipedia and people just shrug and go, "Yeah, it's too bad we've lost all that institutional knowledge." Every once in a while I will read things like about Greek fire, for example, which was a weapon from 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Nobody knows how they made it. The recipe doesn't exist. All they know was something kind of napalm and gasoline-y.
Yeah, it was like magnesium. It would burn in water.
Yeah, it would burn in water, and it would set ships on fire and sink them, but nobody today actually has any idea what it was made of.
Yeah, they used it in Game of Thrones a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah, see, and, that's lost knowledge.
Yeah.
And so these, you don't want these things to get lost. So Pressing On is all about these amazing people who treat this like wicker people, right? It's an analog craft, and they're trying to keep it alive. Sidemen, Long Road to Glory is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful documentary about those unheralded musicians who back up the ones that get all the fame and all the glory. And these are just not very highly paid, but incredibly skilled journeymen. They're not looking for notoriety. They just go on tour and they just play and they do their job and they get no glory for it. And now there's a documentary about them, and it's absolutely terrific. This is specifically looking at three bluesmen. Pinetop Perkins, who was an amazing piano player.
The names just always kill me.
Willie Big Eyes Smith, who was a drummer, and Hubert Sumlin, who was a guitarist. And all of these were sidemen for Muddy Waters, among others.
Yeah.
So it's really a beautiful, beautiful story about three guys who just never said, "I want to be famous, I want to be the star." They just said, "Just give me a job. Just let me stay on tour with you, and I'll do my job, and I just really enjoy it." And it's just wonderful to shine a spotlight on them. And then the last one is from Exhibition on Screen, David Hockney at the Royal Academy of Arts, A Bigger Picture, 2012, and 82 Portraits and One Still Life, 2016. I'm not a huge Hockney fan. I know a lot of people who are. My wife is very, very fond of Hockney.
I am, I must admit.
He's a modernist, a British painter, and he's got a real following. And this is a great celebration of his exhibits, the Royal Academy of Arts. And if you're a Hockney fan, you'll love it. If you're not, I guess maybe you'll glean some appreciation for it. I certainly did.
I always enjoyed those self-portraits and those glasses and those views from the cliffs of Malibu out over the ocean.
And Fernando Trueba, the Spanish director who won an Oscar for Belle Époque, also a big Hockney fan.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Not
All right, let's talk about new movies.
Do some new movies. Ready Player One. Interesting Ready Player One. Steven Spielberg's big Steven Spielberg friend. To me, Ready Player One was like Steven Spielberg biting Steven Spielberg. Like old Steven Spielberg reaching back and saying, what was that young boy doing?
Yeah.
And along with all of his Zemeckis and everything else. Yeah. This basic premise of the film, I don't know, it's the future. and the world is kind of a funky place. Most people are spending their time in this
virtual reality
called Oasis. You can be anybody, you can do anything. This kid, whose name happens to be Wade, it wins the first section of this game that might unlock the key to the fortune of the old guy. Mark Rylance shows up a lot in Steven Spielberg's friends.
He does now. That's amazing.
So he's there and is wearing this kind of wacky wig, which was kind of nuts there. But nevertheless, I don't know. This film actually did pretty good, and it has pretty good scores and Rotten Tomatoes and all of that. But at the time when this film was released and it was out and was going around, I just didn't feel like it was happening. I did not feel like people were catching on to it. We did a slam on it, did we
yeah,
not?
We
did
did.
You guys slam?
We did a slam on DigiGods.com. You know, I have such mixed feelings about it because I liked it, but I felt at the same time, and I think this is what I said in the slam, which is that Steven Spielberg is here riffing on a genre and an era that he himself helped create.
Yeah.
And there's a melancholy to it. There's a sort of heaviness to it. You know, the young man who made those movies is not the older man who's making this one. And it's I feel as though those movies were made by a grown man who was fundamentally Peter Pan, the boy who didn't want to grow up.
Yeah.
And I feel like this movie is made by a grown man who wishes he never had grown up.
Yeah.
And there's that sort of sadness and heaviness to it. And I've heard it changes a few things from the book in a not very good way. You know, like what are the odds of the fact that all these kids are in the exact same city when this game is being played globally?
Yeah.
You know, and there are a few other things in it that don't quite work so well, but it's a very impressive achievement. It's a little bit more Tintin and mocap than a lot of his other recent stuff, obviously. But still, I think in the canon of Steven Spielberg films, it is it's significant.
It's certainly accurate. It makes sense in the canon. That's true. A lot of special features on here. On the what is this? This is 4K.
4K.
Yeah,
That's 4K, and it's the only way to watch this because otherwise you'll lose. I mean, I know a lot of people want you want to see this in 3D. You think you need to see it in 3D because it's the whole immersive virtual reality thing. But I got to tell you, if you don't see it in 4K, and you got to choose, there's no 3D 4K. It's either 4K 2D or 3D in 1080p. I recommend 4K just because it is so much more immersive 2D 4K than it is in 3D HD.
And it looks the way it ought to look in 3D. Well, you want these sort of mocap thing all there to be carved out. You want them crisp. You want them right there. You don't really need them in 3D.
No.
But you do need them sharp and right in your face.
I got a couple of Blu-rays here that are new films. Probably fell off the public radar pretty quickly, but worth rediscovering. One is called Moss by a filmmaker named Daniel Peddle. And it's for the most part a fairly standard coming of age film, but it's with a kind of a southern angle to it.
Yeah.
And there are no name actors in this at all, but the young actor who plays Moss, who's this really troubled kid trying to, he's just turned 18 and he's trying to make sense of the world and his life and his very troubled life, and it feels a little bit throwback at the same time, like it could have been made in the 70s, maybe should have been made in the 70s. There's a little kind of an Easy Rider vibe to it at times, but I really think it's a very, very strong film, and it's very it's kind of a commanding film in terms of the performances and the themes involved. And I think Daniel Peddle is a filmmaker definitely to watch. It includes a little documentary featurette on the making of the film. And then we also have the wonderful and delightful Love After Love, starring Chris O'Dowd and Andy McDowell. Everyone's always forgotten that Andy McDowell is around, and Chris O'Dowd just shows up in the most unusual places. But they are absolutely delightful, and it's one of those movies that just finds it uses tragedy, as is often the case in these movies, to bring these two people together. And then it just lets the two actors really, really run with their skills, run with their personae, with what they do. And it's got a few little twists in it that you sort of easily see coming. But for the most part, you're watching this basically because you want to see Andy McDowell and Chris O'Dowd, and they don't disappoint. They're just absolutely delightful. So highly, highly recommended, especially for fans of those two actors.
Yeah. I got a couple of movies here. Super Troopers 2. Super Troopers.
Gosh, I hate these movies.
Dude, 2001, that ridiculous movie. And, fast forward an entire teenager graduating from high school later, and they I think they scraped together the money to do this on, like, some kind of one of those sort of, like, funding kind of things,
Yep.
You do? And I don't know, maybe the universe is telling you don't need to do that. If you gotta, I don't know, but I plainly am wrong. They made the movie. Here it is. This one includes hilarious extended deleted scenes. I bet it don't. And in any case, look, either you dig this whole Broken Lizards troop kind of thing, or you don't. Never was really my cup of tea. I was always more of a Kids in the Hall, kind of a guy than this. But nevertheless, I know there are people that love this Blu-ray, DVD, digital special features, the making of, deleted scenes, blah, 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 all that kind of crap. Dude, Borg McEnroe, I think I like this better than most people.
Dude.
It just seemed to have come and go. First of all, Shia LaBeouf, who I know people with Shia, and he is, and I get that, but damn it, that boy can act.
Dude, this I'm gonna shock some people right now. This came from Neon. Neon is still trying to get their footing as a distributor. They're doing good films. They just aren't necessarily promoting them very well. They of course did the with Margot Robbie last year as
I, Tonya.
Mm-hmm. And this is my favorite film of the year so far.
It was just an outstanding movie.
I
about
love this
the
movie.
1980 Wimbledon Borg and McEnroe, young McEnroe Shia. The guy that's playing Bjorn is just I can't say his name. You say it.
He's a Swedish actor.
Yeah, I can't.
Sverrir Gudnason.
And he's just it's like that when Ron Howard did that racing movie.
Yes,
with those two guys. It was just bizarre.
Yeah.
How dead on these two guys are.
It's a perfect analogy because both of those movies, Rush is the movie you're talking about. The Ron Howard film Rush, the racing film. Both that film and this film, they wallow in authenticity. They recreate the era. They recreate racing and tennis.
Smells like England 1980. First of all, I watched that match because you know me, tennis freak.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, man, I'm watching
that,
and they are recreating moments. They're recreating moments, and it's just, and I don't get it. I just don't. Why didn't people get this movie?
Both those movies, and that was my favorite movie of that year too. Both of those movies live in the same place, which is even though we're recreating everything meticulously, it's all about these characters and the fact that they are both friends and rivals at the same time.
Yeah.
They admire each other, but they are determined to beat each other down.
Yeah.
They're yin and yang. They can't live without each other, and they represent, opposing forces. And there's so much in Borg versus McEnroe that is so amazing.
And it's so beautifully shot.
It's beautifully done. It's incredibly well made. It is
Skarsgård in the movie.
This is virtuoso filmmaking. It is absolutely virtuoso filmmaking.
People just see this movie because I'm sure for some of the independent, the Indie Spirit Awards.
Yeah.
They'll talk about it at the Indie Spirit Awards.
I hope so.
The Golden Globes might pay attention because you know how they divide up those categories. It's the Golden Globes, but the Oscars need to be paying attention to this.
They do. And I am not a Shia LaBeouf fan. We know that.
I know.
He drives me crazy, and I thought he was sensational in this. Absolutely spot on.
Yeah. Special features, interviews with the director and Shia and the actor that plays. And it's just a really great movie, folks. I got to recommend this just because it's a really good movie.
I wish they would. I wish they would have done a better job marketing it. It came, like you said, it came and it went, and nobody saw it. And it's kind of vanished, and I have this horrible fear that award season will come around and Neon will feel like it's not worth putting any time or money into. And I would heavily encourage them to do the opposite. Just really, really take this thing, put it out, send it out. You know what you do? You take that Blu-ray, you get yourself, a couple hundred copies, which isn't going to cost them anything. And on October 1st, you mail that to every critic in every major critics group in America. Yeah. That's going to be, 60 some odd people in our group. That's going to be about 80 in the New York Film Critics, however many people are in the National Board of Review. And those are the first three.
Yeah. And
get
you
it
give
on
them
their
a little
radar.
note and you say, do yourself a favor. We know you forgot about it.
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor. And I think you'll find a couple of best actors in this at least.
I got a little caper comedy called The Con Is On with a cute cast that includes Uma Thurman and Alice Eve, Tim Roth, Sofia Vergara, and Maggie Q. It's a cute bunch of people, and it's a cute little caper comedy. And, it's exactly what I would have expected from the Grindstone Lionsgate Alliance. If you haven't been keeping up, Grindstone is, of course, a company that really cranks out a lot of stuff that Lionsgate typically releases theatrically and always releases on DVD and Blu-ray. And what Grindstone does, they are all either kind of mid-level, very broad comedies, or they are really violent action films that usually star somebody aging like Bruce Willis, or a bunch of them star Steven Seagal. Anyway, so Grindstone went for the comedy angle on this. Antonio Banderas shows up in a lot of their stuff too. And it's really very much in that grindstone thing. It's very much what they do. It's all about a jewel theft scam, and they're trying to pay off a gangster who's played by Maggie Q, and then all this kind of Ocean's 11, Ocean's 12, 13, Ocean's 8 kind of stuff starts to kind of happen. Some of it's more credible than some of the other stuff. It's touch and go, but it's nice to see these stars. It's nice to see Uma Thurman in particular. And it's well cast, and it's amiable. It's not great, but it's perfectly fine. And Parker Posey even shows up as well. So,
Traffic, Traffick, because that's important for some reason. I don't know. It's the name of this little Blu-ray that I got in front of me. Paula Patton, Omar Epps, Laz Alonso, Rosalind Sanchez. And
where's Omar Epps been?
Seriously, he was on this series that I was watching for a little while, and then that went away and never came back, and I didn't see him for a while. I guess he was off making this movie, among other things. Love me some Paula Patton, of course. And Laz Alonso's a pretty cool guy, too, for that matter. This is one of those movies about a couple that goes off into the woods for a little weekendy kind of thing, stumbles across a biker gang, really dark, deep woods, biker gang that's doing some really brutal, nasty stuff out there. They are unexpectedly joined by their good friends who and next thing you know, all four of them are in danger because these bikers are going to have to kill them. And it's all about how them toughen up and fighting their way out of this situation. Look, it's a perfectly good movie. In that sort of extremely ordinary, you've seen this 10,000 times, a thriller kind of way. Nevertheless, special features include a making of kind of thing and a look at how these things sort of sometimes happen somewhere, but not really.
We got some TV, and we're going to talk about, first off, some foreign stuff, British and French. Spiral Season 6 from MHZ. Season 6, this show continues to be a real hummer. It's interesting, of all the stuff that MHZ has brought over here from Italy, from Sweden, from Germany, from France, from all the different European countries where they've gone to mine some of their best drama, most of it procedural police dramas. The one that really seems to have caught fire here is Spiral. Spiral really has gained a following, and this is a gritty French procedural, takes place in Paris. And it's it's really brutal and really tough, incredibly well written and acted. I don't think it's better than especially some of the Swedish stuff. I think there's some Swedish stuff that's certainly definitely on par with this. However, this is the one that really everybody's just loving, and it's a great show. And season 6, it continues to be a really great show. This has won international Emmys for its writing and for its directing, and it's really sharp. So Spiral Season 6 is worth checking out. And then a couple from Acorn TV. One of them you're already going to know. Murdoch Mysteries is now in season 11. I don't know what more we can say about this. This thing is still... I
love the Murdoch Mysteries.
It's so great. It's so great. And
I loved that it's Canadian.
Yeah. It's it's just a really great show. William Murdoch, played by Yannick Bisson, and Johnny Harris. I mean, some great actors near Thomas Craig. All takes place in Toronto during the Edwardian era, when it's still very much like it's like London West. In a way. But
I love all the references to things going on in America.
Yeah, it's great.
It's so funny.
It's great, and this is made by ITV, who, of course, are the same studio that made... What? Excuse me. Yeah, I'm good. Downton Abbey. And then Eve Miles in Keeping Faith, another Acorn TV original. Keeping Faith is extremely... how do I put this? It's really eerie. It's a skin-crawling kind of a thriller. And it's one of those great thrillers that really toys with how long it can keep your suspense and your tension going. It really can string it out in a beautiful way. Eve Miles, who stars in it, is an attorney. A mom, and she's an attorney, and trying to do all of this stuff, juggling motherhood and job. And there's some interesting tension with the husband too. That they work together. And they founded a law firm together, but she's the one that's carrying the burden with the kids, and there's all that interesting domestic stuff, and then something happens, and I'm not going to tell you what happens, but something happens that you don't see coming, and it throws her life for a loop, and it is where it goes from there into all of these really fascinating and unexpected avenues and little deep trenches. And it gets really awkward. I mean, there are times where you're going to say, "I got to pause this and go eat something," because this tension has to dissipate.
It builds real slow. I like that about it. It builds real slow. 8 episodes, but you only need the 8 episodes.
You do. It doesn't need more, and also includes a behind-the-scenes documentary that's nearly an hour long, and that's really, really great. Eve Miles deserves to have a really big career here. Let me just say that she should have a big career here.
Mosaic is a HBO miniseries from Steven Soderbergh. Basically, it's kind of complicated, and it goes back to this app, this Mosaic app, which was this interactive storytelling app that viewers could use as they followed this whole storyline. That had to do with a whole thing that goes down on New Year's Eve, and then somebody goes disappearing. You have sort of high-profile person goes disappearing. But if you use the app, you could sort of make choices and go down different tributaries of the narrative and come out in different places. So that's the way that works. So anyway, this series right here is sort of like doing that too, but within the context of an actual HBO miniseries. And that's what happens. There's a 6-part thriller, and there's this very successful children's author in it, and there's this big old New Year's Eve party, and somebody goes missing, and the question is exactly what happened. So it's really the experience that you're engaged in here, the sort of way the story is being told, the stuff that has to do with who did what and where and all that kind of stuff. Nothing particularly groundbreaking there, but how you sort of work your way through it all is quite interesting from this thing. So check it out for that reason alone. If nothing, I'll tell you another reason to check it out, because Sharon Stone is in it. And I got to tell you, I still love me some Sharon Stone.
Sharon Stone is, has come back from some rough times, some health problems and financial problems, and she's that's a strong, resilient woman. So very, very happy that that's happened for her.
Yeah.
Let's get to some classics, some library and catalog stuff here. We got 4 really terrific ones this month from Twilight Time. Twilight Time keeps just finding the really interesting stuff. It may or may not be your cup of tea. These are 4 very, very different films, but they're all really great, well worth discovering and putting out there. The most recent of them, actually, is The Children of Huang. I'm surprised that they were actually able to get this. This only came out about 10 years ago. And this is on Blu-ray for the very, very first time. It's based in truth. Roger Spottiswoode directs this extraordinary, it's almost like a Pearl S. Buck type story, which is all about the evacuation. He's Jonathan Rhys-Meyers plays this journalist who's in China when Japan invades in 1938 and has to help basically evacuate Chinese citizens and save these people. And it's a very, very touching story. It's shot in a beautiful, epic way. And it's a quite a good film. It's probably one of Roger Spottiswoode's best films as far as I'm concerned. Didn't get a lot of love from other critics, but I think it's very, very well directed. Rhoda Mitchell, who kind of just fell off the radar a few years ago, she's in it as well. Chow Yun-fat, Michelle Yeoh get together again for the first time since Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. A good, solid film that was released at the time by Sony Pictures Classics, The Children of Huang. And then there's also...
I did the junket for that movie.
Did you really?
Yeah, Talk with Maggie, yeah.
Oh, man, it's just it's a good film. And then there's also an old Jane Russell film with Richard Egan called The Revolt of Mamie Stover. Not a legendary classic or anything. I mean, there's nothing about Jane Russell or Richard Egan that should make anybody just kind of lose their mind over. 2 very, very solid, second-tier performers for a long time. But what makes this worth it is the fact that it was directed by Raoul Walsh. And Raoul Walsh is just one of those great, crusty, old, workman-like journeyman directors who somehow always brought a little something, a little special something to everything that he did. And this is one of them. Made in 1956, and it all takes place in Honolulu. And, Mamie Stover is a dance hall girl, and Richard Egan is just a client, just a guy who kind of takes a liking to her, and somehow this movie winds up being a whole lot better than it really has any business being, and it's kind of fun. Genghis Khan. There have been a number of Genghis Khan movies. This one, they put the original artwork on the cover, which is great because it's the original artwork that was used to clearly borrow from Ben-Hur.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Let's take the Ben-Hur logo and totally rip it off.
There could so have been a lawsuit involved in that.
It really could have been. It's sort of hilarious. This is not the Genghis Khan that starred John Wayne, thank goodness. Nor is this the well. There's another horrible one. This is the one with Omar Sharif. There have been a number. Remember that. This is the one with Omar Sharif and, among other people, Telly Savalas and Eli Wallach, who somehow shows up in every movie ever made throughout the 60s and 70s. Eli Wallach was, he's like 100 years old his whole life.
Yeah.
It's hysterical. He's still alive, isn't he?
No, I think he
finally died?
Not too terribly long ago, but he was like 102. Yeah,
incredible. Anyhow, you're watching this because it's a little bit of period kitsch from 1965, a year that was otherwise known for The Sound of Music and Dr. Zhivago and bigger movies. So this is certainly not it's not what Omar Sharif is known for from this particular period of time, but it's perfectly fine. The other distinguishing part of this, directed by Henry Levin, not a great director, but the other distinguishing part of this is the fact that it was photographed by Jeffrey Unsworth, who 3 years later would do 2001: A Space Odyssey and put himself on the map forever. So it's a nice, good, solid B- level kind of programmer epic from the era. A lot better than stuff like Quo Vadis, but sort of in the same camp.
Yeah, Claudius.
Yeah, and then and then the last one here is Cinderella Liberty, from the Twilight Time series.
I love that movie.
Cinderella Liberty is a beautiful movie. This was one of the first films that Mark Rydell where he really made his mark. He had previously done The Cowboys with Steve McQueen, and then he really kind of put his mark on the world with Cinderella Liberty before going on to do On Golden Pond and.
That was near the end of that period of these filmmakers who were actually working. They were studio filmmakers.
Yeah.
But the films that they were making were very independent-looking films.
Exactly.
Bob Rafelson's Five Easy Pieces, Carnal, all that kind of stuff. But this is Jimmy Caan and what's her name?
Marsha Mason.
Marsha Mason.
Yep. And Eli Wallach again.
Eli Wallach, yeah. And she's got she's got like the black sun and it's
great.
In the Navy and you got it's a great movie, It's
based on a novel by Daryl Ponsican who adapted this, or Ponixon, I guess is how you pronounce his name, who adapted this himself. He wrote The Last Detail, which is kind of what made him famous. Mark Rydell was also one of the first directors to regularly use John Williams. John Williams' score for The Cowboys, if you've never heard it, is one of his best. It's one of his very, very best. It's what kind of pulled him out of television. He does a really wonderful score here, too. It's James Caan is terrific. And he's just coming off of The Godfather here. And Marsha Mason is really kind of making her way as one of the premier actresses of the 1970s, and it's really a lovely, lovely movie.
They don't make movies like that anymore.
No, they don't. This includes the original audio commentary track with Mark Rydell and a little behind-the-scenes bit, as well as an isolated music track. That's it for Twilight Time.
Oh man, neat stuff. You got some more over there? You want to knock?
No, go for those.
Wind Rider, 1986. A lot of things I love about this movie, but mostly they're in the cast of the movie. You got Tom Burlinson in this movie, and he was in The Man from Snowy River, which was just a movie that I really, really loved. He was one of those few movies that sort of made it here. It's just a beautiful movie. You got Charles Tingwell in this movie, and he was in Breaker Morant.
Yeah.
And you got, of course, a very young Nicole Kidman in this movie.
Fantastic.
With that crazy red curly hair
that somehow went away at a certain point.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah,
Dead Calm. I remember she had all that hair, and then suddenly after Dead Calm, the hair went away.
Dead Calm with Billy Zane when he had hair too.
Yeah.
This is just this neat movie. It's about this kid. He's a rich kid. He's a windsurfer, which was a big sport in the late 70s, early 80s, particularly down under. And she's a rock star, or at least a rock and roll girl anyway. And there's a big old competition coming up, and his father wants him to get a real job, and she wants him to be his own man. It's just one of those movies that pops up on television all the time. And I don't know, it just sort of like takes me back, and I really deeply appreciate it. Has all kinds of special features here. This is a HD transfer, probably the best I will have seen this. This is the best I've seen this. I've seen this movie 50 times on television. It's always been soft and grainy. Looking at it here, it's like Nicole Kidman, she's so beautiful you can hardly even look at her. And you know what? She was always a good actress.
She always was.
She was always a good actress. Anyway, Wind Rider from MVD, Rewind Collection. In the Mouth of Madness has to be one of John Carpenter's wildest, craziest, wackiest films.
I've gone back and forth on whether I like this or not
I love
many
it.
times.
I love it. I love it because it is completely out of control. And Sam Neill, also from Down Under, is just playing it straight to the wall. And I love the way it's very meta. Meta before the word meta was being used. There's a book, and the guy is writing the book, but the book is manifesting itself in the real world, and people will read the book, and you read it back, and you're in this whole loop. And this guy goes, hey, is it real? Is he inside? It's really, and it just never takes its foot off the gas pedal.
It doesn't. You can certainly say that. Although it's just it feels like somebody slipped Buckaroo Banzai a tab of acid or something. Yeah. That's what it feels like.
Well, and this is Sam Neill a few years after The Omen and all that kind of stuff, but probably before Jurassic Park, I think, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
For sure.
And so he's not that much of a familiar face. And and John Carpenter doing some of his best work by me. Again, packed with special features on a 4K span. 4K scan of the original Elements audio commentaries with the director and the producer and other people, and look inside the film and behind the film. This audio commentary with the cinematographer. Just really, 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 if you're a fan of this particular genre or John Carpenter's films, collector's edition, John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness.
So we got some stuff here from the Warner Archive collection, and the first one is a movie you've probably never heard of. And I almost don't even know how to review this. So Ned Kelly, let's just talk about Ned Kelly for a second. Ned Kelly.
Know who Ned Kelly is. Yeah.
Ned Kelly is the most famous outlaw of the Australian Western period. Ned Kelly is sort of like the Australian version of Billy the Kid and Jesse James all wrapped together.
Yeah.
And Ned Kelly's story has been told at least a dozen times already in the silent era. There are 2 or 3 silent Ned Kelly films from Australia. And then the one that's perhaps most known here was one with Heath Ledger from about 10 years ago or so. 10 years ago. Before he obviously passed away and before The Dark Knight. And at some point, after Yahoo Serious had his very bizarre carrot toppy moment of fame here playing young Einstein, he went back and made this incredibly zany and odd movie where he kind of sort of plays Ned Kelly transported to the present, but with all this weird Yahoo serious stuff going on, called Reckless Kelly. That's this movie. It's called Reckless Kelly. The fact that I had to describe all of that to you before even mentioning the name of the movie is the problem, is that you're not going to go into this unless you know all of that ahead of time. And I'm just going to tell you, unless you really like Yahoo Serious and that whole thing that he does, this will not make any sense to you.
Every now and again, the Aussies would spit somebody at us. A couple, the other one's Paul Hogan, the crocodile.
And there's a little bit of that in this too, because he comes to the United States at a certain point here, and it's a weird movie, man. It's really odd, but it's Yahoo Serious, and he has a following, so whatever. And then the other 2 Warner, that's on DVD only, DVD-R, manufacturer on demand. The other 2 Warner Archive releases are both on Blu-ray, and they absolutely deserve it. These are 2 flat-out classics, and if you are a completist of great movies, you're going to have both of them. Herman Melville is typically known for writing Moby Dick, but he's also known for writing Billy Budd. And Billy Budd was turned into a sensational CinemaScope movie with Robert Ryan and Peter Ustinov, and it was Terrence Stamp's first movie, and man, does he look great in it. He's young, and look, here's the picture of Terrence Stamp in it. Look at that, right in the middle there.
Man,
he's just a kid.
That's a leading man. That's a leading man to be.
Look at those. Look at that jaw.
That's even before Poor Cow.
Yeah, it is pre-Poor Cow. This was his first thing. So anyway, this is really, really a tremendous movie. It is really well done. It's beautifully executed in every conceivable way. Directed, I should point out, by Peter Ustinov, who really at this point knew how to put a movie together because he'd been in enough of them. This is over 2 hours long. And it's just a wonderful swashbuckling seafaring adventure in that classic CinemaScope vein. The other one is Paul Newman in one of his very best performances, The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean. I grew up on this movie. This was directed by John Huston and written by John Milius. There's a lot of testosterone in that right there.
John Milius, Red Dawn, baby.
I like to imagine that John Milius and John Huston probably got together when they were working out the script for this, and rather than working out the story, they just compared wounds and drank a lot to see who could actually hold his liquor the hardest. And then they went out and they would shoot big game. And somewhere in there, they worked out a movie, and Paul Newman was the beneficiary.
The thing about John Milius, though, I mean, for all, Conan, I mean, how many things of John Milius? John Milius
co-wrote Apocalypse Now.
Apocalypse Now. Exactly, that specifically. Yeah. John Milius is a guy who didn't go to Vietnam because he had asthma.
That's right.
So,
But here, let me tell you my John Milius story before we get into what a great Western the Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean is. This had to be, I want to say 1980, 81. I don't even remember what movie I was seeing. I might have been standing in line for Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was at the Man's National Theater, where I would later work when I graduated from high school. Mm-hmm. And I think it was probably Raiders of the Lost Ark. And we're standing in line. The National doesn't exist anymore as a theater. And I knew what John Milius looked like.
Yeah,
right?
big dude, burly.
I didn't realize he was about 5'10", though.
Yeah.
He's not tall. He's just burly.
Yeah.
And suddenly we're standing there, and here's John Milius scoping out the line. Now, the reason I noticed him was not because I noticed John Milius. The reason I noticed him was because I thought, who is that old fat white guy who is wearing a kamikaze rising sun headband?
Yeah.
What is that about? He was. Those headbands that they'd strap on with the rising sun on. Yeah. He had one of those on. Yeah. It's a Saturday morning in Westwood. It was like 85 degrees in the summer. What are you doing, man? Come on.
And John Milius would have been like 45 then.
Yeah.
John Milius, interesting thing about John Milius?
Yeah.
From St. Louis.
Is he?
Yep.
You got all the good people.
I have no
there.
idea. It's a weird thing.
Well, anyway, this is The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean from the 1970s is a classic 70s Western. And 70s Westerns are starting to get into that revisionist thing where they're really, they're sort of turning their backs on everything that was a little bit glorious and glamorous about all of those classic John Wayne Westerns of the 50s and 60s, all that John Ford stuff, and they're getting a little bit tougher and more cynical.
Now you get a little big man in movies like this.
Yeah. And this is great. This is absolutely right in there, and it's there's a bank heist, and there are all these interesting sort of Western tropes in here, but it really is all about reinventing our mythology of the West in a very cynical but incredibly entertaining way. And what a great movie this is! Fantastic Maurice Jarre music. There's a famous song here that was written by Andy Williams, or sung by Andy Williams, written by the Bergmans, Marilyn and Alan Bergman. But what a great cast! I mean, Stacy Keach and Tab Hunter and Jackie Bissett and Anthony Perkins, Victoria Principal, Anthony Zerbe, Ava Gardner, Roddy McDowell. I mean, it's just an amazing bunch of people. And why wouldn't you want to be in this with Paul Newman in a script written by John Milius and directed by John freaking Huston? It's The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean. You've got to see it. It's one of the all-time great Westerns.
And Paul Newman particularly good in that. It is ridiculous to me that Terminator 2 Judgment Day is considered a classic film, but it is. There it is, 1991. It's odd that I can sometimes remember. I mean, I can remember mostly when I saw big movies, but I can remember something so specific about seeing this movie in Westwood. Yeah. As a critic. And still having to stand in line.
I reviewed this for Entertainment Today,
and
I did the junket. I remember
gig.
sitting there with James Cameron and everybody from the movie. I remember this so well.
Yeah. I remember my mother-in-law and father-in-law were in town. We took them to see the movie. Anyway, this is a 2-disc Ultra 4K and Blu-ray. It's just fantastic. All kinds of stuff on it. You just can't go wrong. Tell me, Wade, this has never been released since 1991.
4K.
Not 4K.
It's been released about 3 or 4 times on Blu-ray and all in different cuts, which has gotten very annoying. There are all these different cuts that Cameron couldn't decide on, and finally
all Blade Runner on it.
Yeah, so just forget about all those and just get this.
Just get that and be done
just get it on 4K.
This one's unrated. Keep that in mind.
And then we have The Navigator, A Medieval Odyssey. Vincent Ward is a very, very well-regarded Australian director who, or is he from New Zealand? Vincent Ward.
Oh, I can't remember. I
thought he was Australian, but I could be wrong. I might have gotten that wrong. Anyway, I think it's New Zealand. I think Vincent Ward is a Kiwi. So my apologies to all of our Down Under people and to our Kiwi people. Yeah, I didn't mean to. I usually get that right. Yep. Yeah, see New Zealand. See, because Sam Neill is from New Zealand, and so is Russell Crowe, and everybody else gets those wrong.
Yeah.
So I always try to make sure that we don't do wrong by our friends in New Zealand and Australia, and make sure we keep those two countries separate, close as they are. So anyway, Vincent Ward is probably best known here for I want to say
Virgil.
Virgil was his first film. What Dreams May Come.
Oh yeah,
Robin Williams.
Robin Williams, yeah.
Which didn't really succeed as well as they had hoped it would. In any case,
astounding special effects. Pioneering stuff.
Yeah, and The Navigator, A Medieval Odyssey, it's again, it's like a lot of his stuff. It's not as successful as it should be, but you can't help but admire what he's trying to do here. You're trying to. It's basically kind of somewhere between Time Bandits, I guess I want to say, and maybe Back to the Future. I don't know. That's probably not a really good analogy, but anyway, it's a time travel story. It deals with this kid and the Black Death and being transported to a place and time. I'm trying not to give away sort of what the essence of it is, but it as a genre film, it doesn't quite work as a drama, almost even as a period drama. It does. It's very meditative.
Yeah.
It's a little artier, and that's sort of a hallmark of Vincent Ward's work, is that he's a little artier than most genre filmmakers are.
He was one of the principal writers on Alien 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he does. I don't know what he's doing now, but anyway, it's worth watching. I don't know if it's worth owning, but this is from Arrow Video, and it's on Blu-ray, and it has a ton of extras here, including a 1989 documentary on Vincent Ward that was originally aired on television, and a new appreciation that was recorded specifically for this by film critic Nick Roddick.
Yeah. Memoirs of an Invisible Man. Man, did this movie stink up the place when it came out.
Don't you wonder what they were thinking when they greenlit this?
Yeah, well, look.
Chevy Chase is the Invisible Man.
Chevy Chase, that's the Invisible Man. And it doesn't, first of all, that means it's going to be a comedy. Yeah. And what did Chevy Chase do funnier than anybody else on the planet? Fall down.
Yeah.
What does an Invisible Man?
Yeah.
An Invisible Man falling down? That's not funny. Can't see the Invisible Man falling down.
Even better than that was a movie that I actually was an usher for. I worked at the theater when they released the Steve Guttenberg 3D Invisible Man movie.
Oh, I remember that.
An Invisible Man in 3D. Let me say that again.
Yeah.
The Invisible Man
in 3D.
In 3D.
It's just they used to set money on fire at the studios.
The 80s, which, by the way, 80s were weird.
Back when we used to make money. Anyway, this is really a terrible movie. Sam Neill shows up in this movie. It's funny how far back some of these guys go. And it's a John Carpenter film, which is just didn't make any sense as a John Carpenter film in any way, shape, or form. Nevertheless, here we have a new 2K scan and some other features, including outtakes. I wonder what they took out of the Invisible Man movie that they thought, nah, this is not working. But we'll leave the rest of this crap movie going. I don't know, whatever. The Invisible Man on Blu-ray.
And then we have a Kino Lorber title here that is kind of a cool rediscovery. I had forgotten that this existed. I saw this a long time, like decades ago. This is a brand new HD master from a 4K scan of the original 35mm negative. And hopefully this isn't a letdown now that I've given you that. Let me repeat that. This is a new HD master from a 4K scan of the 35mm original negative of the movie A Strange Adventure. I know you're thinking, what? What is this? What? Yeah, and there's nobody in particular who stars in this that you should be very much impressed by.
That's good noir.
It's just it's kind of a second-tier noir, but it's good second-tier noir. The guy who directed this, William Whitney, is basically known for a whole lot of kind of cheesy westerns. Those programmer westerns that they would just shoot in about 2.5 weeks and, round up some horses and have the cowboys make up their dialogue. And this is all about, some guys who rob an armored car. And they get a guy with a hot rod, a guy who's like a hot rod racer to be their getaway guy.
Yeah.
And
which is such a contemporary. This is 1956.
1956.
That's such a contemporary notion.
And then they go and hide out in this mountain cabin, and then all hell breaks loose, and everything's all wacky at that point. It's a really, really, it's a much cooler film than that description lets on. It's just done with a whole lot of style, a whole lot of kind of noir-y flair. And the nice thing about it is, Tim and I talk about this a lot, this movie does not overstay its welcome. No. 1 second, this is 70 minutes.
Boom.
You'd knock those credits off when they roll at the end. You're there 69 minutes and out.
Nick
Give
Adams
yourself
is
an
in
hour.
this movie too.
It's
Love Nick
fantastic.
Adams in that movie. And Joan Evans, who is so hot in this movie.
Yeah.
Whitney used to direct like a lot of those Western, High Chaparral and the
Yeah.
Virginian and
Yeah.
the Cowboys and all that stuff.
Yeah.
He was one of those dudes. Beyond Re-Animator. These movies
Is that possible to get beyond Re-Animator?
They just won't stop. They
I
just
know.
will not stop. And you got to appreciate it a little bit. There's really not a whole lot more to say about it, but I actually enjoyed this stuff back in the day. Anyway, audio commentary here with director Brian Yunza and the isolated score and audio interviews, all kinds of neat stuff. Look, you're either a fan of this business or you're not. Lots of people are. You still got Jeffrey Combs here as Dr. Herbert West, just shooting all kinds of crazy green goo into people's heads and making them explode.
So silly.
The one thing I like about these movies, practical effects. They never did. They never went to the CGI.
True.
They never went to the CGI. They build crap. They blow it up. Green goo flies all over the place. You got to enjoy that, man.
Milos Forman.
Milos, he went away.
He did. We just lost him recently, and he didn't exactly go out on a bang. Milos Forman reteamed. They kind of all tried to get together and do a big thing again. He reteamed with some of his greatest collaborators, including producer Saul Zaentz, with whom he made 2 Best Picture winners, and screenwriter Jean-Claude Carrière, who wrote Valmont and who wrote tons of films for Unbearable Lightness of Being, some of the greatest stuff for Buñuel, one of the greatest screenwriters of all time in many languages. And they all got together for a film that by rights should have been absolutely fantastic. You had Natalie Portman, Javier Bardem, and Stellan Skarsgård, Goya's Ghosts. And I remember when this came out in 2006, and I thought, oh, this is going to be amazing. How do you get all those people together and you don't bonk it? You can't. It's just too much talent that they're just all going to make each other better. And
But that movie is crazy boring, man.
This movie is just a great big lump of coal.
Yeah. Stellan Skarsgård, Randy Quaid, just so boring.
It's just dull. It's really dull. And the whole thing takes place during the Spanish Inquisition, and it's got a little Napoleonic War backdrop going on, and Javier Bardem plays Goya, the great painter, and but it doesn't really go anywhere.
Beautiful.
It's nice to look at, but it just doesn't do anything. You never actually feel. The whole idea is that you're supposed to sort of feel the weight of the Inquisition, the weight of the politics. You're supposed to feel Goya and his artwork and the people in his circle is sort of representative of those who are suffering. And I understand what they're going for, but it just doesn't work. It didn't work. Still, it's not worth watching. It's an unfortunate failure given all of the incredible talent involved. So it's called Goya's Ghosts. It is out on Blu-ray. It's worth a rental, I would say. But don't expect what you would normally expect from that collection of people.
Yeah.
And then A Matter of Life and Death, which is one of the all-time great Pal Pressburger films, has a Criterion release.
Michael Palin and Emmerich Pressburger.
Such a beautiful movie.
David Niven.
This was also at one point called Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah.
I think it was Stairway to Heaven when it was released in the United States. And in the UK, it was A Matter of Life and Death, which is the title it goes by now. This was restored a number of years ago. I think it was about, I want to say late 90s that it was restored. And I saw an outdoor screening of that restoration at the private plane airport in Santa Monica on the tarmac, which was introduced by Quentin Tarantino, who was wearing surgical scrubs.
Why?
I don't know.
Oh.
He was wearing scrubs. I just remember that. There was Tarantino on the tarmac wearing scrubs, introducing a movie that was being projected outdoors. Still surrounded by all the aircraft. It was really fun. If you've never seen this movie, you need to see it. It is absolutely wonderful. It kind of goes in the same it was made in 1946.
A guy named Joe.
And what are some of those other afterlife movies? It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
And there's Angels in the Outfield. There was a lot of obsessing on angels and fate and death at the time. And this is one of them. And obviously World War II
making deals with God. A lot of making deals with God.
A lot of that
stuff.
Yeah. But what was the original? The original Heaven Can Wait.
Oh yeah.
Which was the film that was a remake of.
Not the one with Warren Beatty and
the original
one. And for that matter, Spielberg remade A Guy Named Joe as Always.
Yes.
With Richard Dreyfuss, I think, and like Holly Hunter and John Goodman,
and Audrey Hepburn.
And Audrey Hepburn, that's right.
Yeah.
The last film, I think that was her last film.
It was her last film.
Yeah.
So anyway, the David Niven plays a fighter pilot for the RAF, and long story short, there's a whole thing. He winds up going to heaven, and yada yada yada, and it's just a wonderful movie to watch. I'm not going to tell you anything else about it. You just have to see it.
Those movies still play, man.
They still do.
Yeah.
It's absolutely beautiful. It's a wonderful, beautiful, beautiful movie, and it's maybe the best performance David Niven ever gave, as far as I'm concerned. Tons of extras on here. Classic Criterion release. If there's one Criterion you've got to own from this year, I'm going to say it's going to be this one. There is, and just by the way, Michael Powell's widow, Thelma Schoonmaker, editor for Martin Scorsese, still working, still cutting stuff.
Still cutting.
And she gives a new interview here. And there's a whole bunch of other great stuff here, including a 1998 short film starring Jack Cardiff, the DP of this, who was one of the all-time great cinematographers.
I interviewed Jack.
This is so great.
Just before he passed away.
Really?
Yeah. Some panel at the Los Angeles Film Festival.
Oh, that's tremendous.
10 or 15 years ago. Interesting. Yeah. Wonderful.
Outstanding.
He shot all the greats, Garbo, and just
all those old British guys.
Yeah. I have got something called this H.P. Lovecraft adaptation, Dagon. I'm not a big Lovecraft fan. Are you?
No.
Yeah, me either. Okay.
I get it. I understand it. I know people who are really into it, but it's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, well, anyway, this is one of those things. Look, there's all kinds of special features on this, audio commentaries from just about everybody, but certainly Stuart Gordon. And Ezra Gotten, who plays the lead in the film, Paul Marsh. This is just one of those films with all kind of people wearing all kinds of crazy outfits and a guy in a mask with a knife and people, dude. I'm sorry, it's just not my thing. I don't know why you need this. Anyway, it's from the H.P. Lovecraft Collector Series, Dagon. If you're into it, go for it, baby.
So just a few foreign things to knock out. We'll wrap the show up after we hit a few foreign things. One of the great Russian directors in recent years is Andrei Zvygantsev. Best I'm ever going to do with his name. You know him as the guy who made Leviathan and Loveless, which are his last two films. Are really, really great. And, very good writer, very good director, very brooding, very Russian.
Yeah. So Russian, he's almost Swedish.
Yeah, there you go. But two of his earlier films now are getting a little bit of attention, and they are both out again from Kino Lorber on Blu-ray, and that would be The Return and The Banishment. Those titles go together.
Yeah.
And The Banishment sort of is a lot more about what the mood of his films. But The Return was the film that really put him on the map. That was his very, very first film in 2003. And it won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival, and very deservedly so. It's a story of two brothers and this. I don't want to even compare it to East of Eden because it's not even close to East of Eden. But it's almost more like what's the why am I forgetting this now?
Which one?
Sean.
Indian Runner.
Not the Indian Runner. I'm thinking with Christopher Walken as the dad and the sons, directed by James Foley.
Oh no, not the one where he's.
What am I thinking of? The James Foley film.
Oh yeah. Hold on a second.
Oh gosh, why is that title not coming to me? I hate it when this happens. I really do.
It's because we're.
This is the point where all of our listeners are now screaming it at the same time. They're like, "What's wrong with you?" Normally I got these things.
I got an excuse.
Yeah,
because I smoke lots and lots of weed.
Anyway, so this is one of those dysfunctional father relationship things, and it all winds up going on being into this
at close range.
So this hits me as very much a kind of an Eastern European hit at close range, and everything winds up going into a fishing trip, which is as much as Hemingway has ever written anything to do with fish as being a metaphor. This surpasses it. The fishing trip is a total metaphor. And it really is an incredibly powerful movie. It's very well written, beautifully acted, incredibly eerily photographed. And then he would go on to make The Banishment, which is equally as impressive in many respects. It didn't get the same attention for some strange reason. This is the one that kind of fell off the radar a little bit. But this all deals, again, with a very rough family situation, as something like Loveless also does. But this time it's a nuclear family, a husband and wife, and you can see shades of Loveless sort of echoed all through this.
Yeah.
There's a great behind-the-scenes featurette on this and an interview with the director that you really, really have to watch. It's really, really great. So, and again, very, very, very symbolic, very metaphorical in all those creepy Russian ways.
Let's see what we got over here. Let me give you that one.
Oh, okay.
Pronounce that title. Perfect Obedience.
Oh, yeah.
This is just a lovely, lovely film. Basically, it's one of those films that's set within the Catholic Church, and pedophilia, sort of sex scandals are going on all over the place. This is in the 1960s. This one we spend with a 13-year-old boy who's training in the seminary. Look. This is a very piercing and powerful movie. It's about a subject that we don't want to talk about a lot. The thing about this movie that's it's just so real. I mean, there's this father, and he's going after these kids, and there's a scene in the shower, and it just makes you so queasy. It's the word. And then when you press forward and we think about this subject today, well, anyway. It's a very, very good movie. Not a whole lot to offer in terms of special features on it. It's a tight little film set in Mexico. Lovely, lovely movie about a very difficult subject. Perfect Obedience. When do you say no to God's man?
A film that really made an interesting run at festivals a couple of years ago is A Ciambra. It was probably about a year ago. A Ciambra is an Italian film from director Jonas Jonas Carpignano, who did Mediterranea. This was his second film. It's a story of, it's basically kind of a coming of age film, but it takes place in southern Italy in this very, very awkward multi-ethnic area. This is a Romany kid, a gypsy kid, who wants to kind of be a flashy crook like his brother, and how he sort of the challenges that life encumbers him with, trying to do that, trying to deal with being part of an exile culture, in a strangely, awkwardly multicultural part of a very, very parochial country. If you're Italian, or if you understand the cultural tenets that are at play in this film, it'll probably be more meaningful. But it's still very, very well done, and it's got a documentary and a featurette and deleted scenes, and it was at Cannes in 2017. Did not get an Oscar nomination this last year as they had hoped, but nonetheless, there it is. It's from Sundance Selects.
Well, this is a lovely film called Will You Be Mine by a filmmaker named Sophie Laloy, who's just very, very good. A very, very simple little film, about a fairly object subject. This is a young girl. She leaves home to go study piano, and she has to live with a family friend because she doesn't have all that much money, and her and the family friend sort of develop a fascination with one another. And it sort of drifts off into a little love story, and the music is extraordinary, and it's like a single white female kind of thing in a certain sort of way, but not quite. It's sort of obvious as all of that. But nevertheless, it's a lovely movie from Film Movement. Again, not a whole lot by way of special features on this, but it's very, very, very classically made, and it won the Golden Zenith at the Montreal Film Festival.
Very nice. Another festival favorite is a movie called Blue Desert by Eder Santos. And I'm not as enthralled by this as I think some people were at the time. This is a Brazilian film. It feels long for its 94 some minutes, but it's very meditative, and it's very it's not magical realism, but it is. It's like magical realism light in some respects. It's very dreamlike, about a guy looking for existential meaning in life, and sort of about the existential journey that he goes through, and the whole kind of hook here is that it's based on a Yoko Ono art book called Grapefruit that I'm not familiar with. I'm not into Yoko Ono, but apparently that's the inspiration for the film. And if you know that going in, then you'll know that it's got a very unconventional sort of anti-linearity going on. But it's weird and funky and trippy and kind of science fiction-y, kind of fantasy, kind of meditative. I mean, it's got a thing going. Not exactly my thing, but anyway, there it is. That's from Indie Picks.
And from over here, we've got a little French film called The Three-Way Wedding. This should be funny. It's actually a drama. I used to love movies like Bob and Dad and Caroline. Remember those movies back in the day?
Sure.
But this one, they take it all serious. Anyway, you have this guy. He's a playwright. He has this play that he's about to stage. The wife, his ex-wife, or the woman he's about to divorce, is the lead in the play. She has a partner. They all go out into the wilderness so that they could get ready for this play. And next thing you know, they're all doing it. They're doing it. They're doing it. Anyway, it doesn't really work out, and it gets kind of dark, and I don't see why. It seems like that should just be fun. Why the hell? You're a bunch of cute French people. Just enjoy it. But no, they get all pissy about it, so it doesn't work out. Anyway, neat movie. Relatively speaking, if you like the drama side of things, I think they should have kept it funny.
Indivisible by Eduardo De Angelis. This is from Keanu Lorber, and this is solid. This is another Italian film. Italian cinema has had a really difficult time lately. Mm-hmm. It's they lost a lot of big filmmakers back in the 80s, and they've really struggled, not gotten a lot of government support. Co-productions have been hard. The country's economy hasn't been great. So the once great Italian film industry really fell on hard times the last 15 to kind of 20 years. And so you have a handful of directors that are making a run at it, coming back up. Eduardo De Angelis is one of the more interesting ones. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes in the future. This is all about Daisy and Viola, who are conjoined twins, played by actual sisters, Angela and Mariana Fontana. And it's not as whenever you hear conjoined twins in a movie, I always think of like Zed and Two Knots, the Peter Graham movie.
Yeah.
And you always think they play it like freaks. Yeah, they like use it as a metaphor for something wrong with the human condition or something political commentary or whatever. And there's a little tiny bit of that here, but it's not as freakish and weird as you would think. And
Twin Falls, Idaho.
Yeah, some of that. And of course, it kind of treads on some of the obvious stuff, like the idea of being separated literally and figuratively, and it's the metaphor hits you on the head a little bit at sometimes, but it's still an interestingly made film, and the actresses are very, very good, and the performances are very, very strong, and I have some hope for the future. So Indivisible by Eduardo De Angelis.
Nabil Yaoush made this wonderful film called Razia. This is a North African film. This is a North African director. And this is really a great movie. It's set in Casablanca, Morocco. It's these 5 disparate stories that sort of roam around and eventually weave themselves together into this one movie, which we've seen done before in many films like Crash and whatnot here in America, but not that much in films from North Africa. And of course, because it's set in North Africa on the streets of Morocco, you just see things you don't usually see. Yeah. And it's about this young woman who refuses to participate in some of the traditions and mores of North Africa. For instance, she wears a tight mini dress.
Nice.
Then that's going to be a problem. Nevertheless, she pushes back. It's a really, really neat film. Nabil Yaoush, just an intricate tale of several stories that come together and work out in a beautiful, beautiful way. You'll enjoy this. I wish there were something on this DVD by way of special features, but there is not.
And we're going to go out with a movie that we have a giveaway for. We're going to be giving away 4 copies of Operation Red Sea by Dante Lamb. This is a Blu-ray and a DVD combo set, and from Wellgo, with deleted scenes and trailers. And let me just tell you, Operation Red Sea, Dante Lamb. If you don't know about Dante Lamb is one of the most unrelenting action directors from Hong Kong, who would, of course, make the move over to Chinese filmmaking now that everything has moved away from Hong Kong. This is a brand new film. It's 140 minutes long, and it feels like it's about 25 minutes long because all it is just action. It's a commando movie. Look, a bunch of terrorists. Yeah. It's this simple. It's probably not much different from the new Mission Impossible, to be honest. Some terrorists got an atomic, or trying to get some nuclear material to blow up the world, and these Chinese commandos have to go and stop them. So China is trying to basically make patriotic movies now that they've learned from American patriotic movies. All you need to do is put a bunch of soldiers together and go Rambo on them. Yeah. So this is like a Chinese Rambo team movie, and it's just Chinese commandos and guns and explosions and tanks and airplanes and stopping terrorists and everything blowing up, and it might as well be an American movie. It's just a different nationality. Yeah. That's all it is.
My favorite Dante film is Vampire Effect. That's a wicked movie.
He makes fun movies. So Operation Red Sea is a whole lot of fun. So just go ahead and send us an email to gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com with your name and address in the body of the email, and put red in the subject line. Just RED, red, and it'll get to us. And we'll pick 4 winners as long as you get it to us by Monday, August 6th. Monday, August 6th. We're going to give it 2 weeks because we don't have a show this next week. So Monday, August 6th. We'll give it 2 weeks, and we will see you then.